Hello, welcome to the Nitty Gritty Writing Podcast. I'm Simon Cantan.
And I'm Dave Higgins.
And today we're going to be talking about how to create a cover, the very thing we warned against last week. But before we do that, we're going to do our usual updates of what we've been doing in the world of writing this week. And as has now become usual, Dave, do you want to go first?
Okay. As is usual, another episode of Seven Stones, my Swords and Sorcery serial, written, edited, polished, and published. So that's 61 parts done now, with so continuous through from the start of 2015, with only a break for Yule each year, so that my family don't string me up and refuse to let me ever write anything ever again. So I'm reasonably impressed with that. The other thing I've been doing is I've been putting together an anthology for someone else in ebook. So I've been battling with the fact that Amazon actually have two different standards that they support, which handle images differently. So all of those internal covers where you want it to work really well on the big Kindle Fire tablets that are sort of inches and inches of screen space in full 300 DPI color, and you want it to work on the little old Kindle with the wiggly thing at the bottom where it's a tiny black and white image, have different ways of handling images. So I've been spending hours coding that just to make sure that it works for every single different variation of Kindle, which was it's fun. It's fun once you've done it. It's shockingly frustrating when you discover that no, the new format for Kindle doesn't actually handle the old Kindle image format as is. So you do have to actually code them both in and then add an extra layer of code to go, this one if it's an old Kindle, and use this one if it's a new Kindle, which is the kind of thing where, as we said last week, having someone to format your ebook for you can pay off if you want to do something unusual. So if you want a book that's an anthology of all of your books or several books, so it's got individual covers inside the book that display well on every form of Kindle that's out there, potentially having someone who knows the code do it can produce something that's much more pleasing than doing it yourself. But also, if you are just sending a story and you want the cover on it once at the front, you don't necessarily need that amount of finesse to produce something that readers will find pleasing. Apart from that, more work on Adventure, the comical fantasy I'm writing with Simon. So that's been my week.
On the images thing, the title I've written that was a pain in the neck was Shiny New Swindle, because it has those hacking images.
Yeah.
And it keeps resizing them. So every different format. So you make a Mobi and an EPUB and a PDF and a whatever. Yes. Smashwords is the worst, because they'll allow you to make your own EPUB, but then they only do Word document for all the others. So I'm there going, I have a Mobi thing I can get out of Scrivener, and you're making me use this Word doc to, and the Mobi is it reverses the images. So instead of black and white, they're white and black. So that's a major pain. But at the same time, I'm kind of, okay, I don't really sell anything there. and if someone complains to me, I will give them a Moby.
Yeah.
I can't be bothered to go into the code and change it all.
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I don't imagine there are a lot of people going to Smashwords because they want high quality typography. They're going to Smashwords potentially because it's where the book is, or because they want the EPUB. People who want exquisitely nuanced Moby files are probably going to be going, well, I'll get those from Amazon because Amazon own the Moby format. So that's where you're going to get the best ones.
Smashwords in general, I just wish would improve their online store.
Well,
because they have the potential to capture some market share, because some people don't like Amazon and don't like Apple and want to...
Offering Moby, I think they're the only people who offer Moby apart from Amazon and people who've gone to the trouble of setting up a storefront of some kind for their own work. You can get Moby from the author or directly from certain small publishers. But Smashwords and Amazon are the only places where you've got the big book search engine and the ability to get it in Moby. So my theory, and it hasn't played out yet, and I don't know if that's just because Smashwords are cautious or because I'm wrong, is that when they released the ability to have the EPUB the author stroke publisher creates, that was a test for doing it for all the other formats. So they wanted to see what the load was. And they checked, because they offer distribution to Amazon. So to my way of thinking, surely if they're offering distribution to Amazon, they'll want authors who actually care about the Moby file to go to Smashwords, put a good Moby file up, and then distribute it so that those authors don't have to go to Amazon to sell their Mobies. They can just use Smashwords as one source. And also they can have the Moby up. Because I know some authors who don't upload anything other than the EPUB because their brand is so focused on everything we release is high quality, typesetting, free of mistakes. They go, well, I'm not having a format out there that's not perfect, so I'm not going to use anything that's converted by anyone other than me.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough. And
yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, they're potentially missing out. But then again, I can see why, given the amount of effort it takes to sense check an ebook, that they don't want to have every author uploading 5 files and having to quality check all of them.
No, I mean, all I'd want is Moby, EPUB, and PDF. The rest of them can be auto-converted because who reads them? I mean, you're either reading a Moby, an EPUB, or a PDF usually. And even PDF would be a bit strange because it's got fixed type settings and things. Anyway, so that was a complete aside. But my week, I've written the first just under 5,000 words of my vampire novel, Personal Gods. I've written some more sorcery. And I'm trying to come up with an idea for a dystopian book. And instead I came up with an idea for a post-apocalyptic book. The post-apocalyptic book I quite like as well. It's only a little 8-line thing, so it's not that much yet. And the final thing I did was I did a little analysis on my four most recent books about how long they took to write, edit, outline, all that kind of stuff. And I see that the one that Violent Science, which I didn't particularly enjoy writing, but people have said they really enjoyed reading, took also the least amount of time for the amount of thousands of words it is. So I divided, obviously, the hours by the thousands of hours the final book was to get kind of an approximation. So I'm thinking I'm going to try the same thing with the vampire book, the same approach as I did with Violent Science, and see if I can produce a decent book. So the difference is about, what was it, about 20% difference, 20% less hours to produce the book. So I'm going to try it out and see how it goes. Anyway, so we can move on to our topic. Oh, before we do, I wanted to give a shout out to Anita Sulber, who commented on our previous video and said that, so we were mentioning that a good story is more important perhaps than perfect grammar. And she said that if she's reading a book that she really enjoys, she'll forgive pretty much any grammar glitches. But if she's reading a book that she hates, then any single thing being wrong is irritating. So I heartily agree with that. Oh, and also a very brief shout out to Heidi's friend, my wife Heidi. One of her friends reads my books and said that she watches this podcast. So, hello. I forget. I don't think Heidi even told me her name. So, hello, whoever you are. I'm happy that you're watching.
Does she write, or?
I don't think so. I think she's just a reader.
They are brilliant.
But at least our catch-up thing at the start of the show is useful. If she's reading my books, she knows what I'm writing then. So the first thing I was going to do was share my screen because I have an example. So this is Hard Vacuum. As you can see, it's in GIMP. So Hard Vacuum. So I'm not a graphical artist or designer or anything like that. My skills are very limited. So what I do to make, or what I've done in this series particularly to make easy covers, is I go over to Shutterstock, like so. And Hard Vacuum is, it's a Space Marine kind of thing with a female sergeant who is going around beating people up and shooting people and stuff. So I go and I pick an image with space in it. I think this might even be the same, one of these is the same image as I've already got. And I put that image in GIMP. I buy a copy of that image, which is, I don't know, whatever that is, $7 or $8. Put it in GIMP. Then I go over to my font selection, and there's a font I found ages ago now, 2 years ago, I think, that was free for commercial use, which is Gill Sans MT Ext Condensed Bold Extra Condensed. So if
It's an exquisite font. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good for book covers. It's very simple, obviously, and it's not particularly fancy to use the same font on every single book you ever write. Right. But if you're
edges though, so it's great in thumbnail.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It is very easy to read in thumbnail. So I write whatever the title is in Gill Sans MT. Then I go to the color select tool and I press on the font, so like so. Then I change the layer to the image and I press Control C, and then I press Control V and give myself a new layer there. So now I've got the letters in the background, basically a copy of the background, but in those letters. Then I go up to the curves tool under colors, and I adjust the colors until it looks nice. That is the extent of my cover design skills. So when you do that, you get a cover that, if I get rid of all this stuff again, you get a cover that is readable, is legible, and if you've picked the right stock image, will convey what the genre is. So if I go down to thumbnail and select the whole image, so you can see, like, you can read easily that it says hard vacuum, even in tiny thumbnail like that, and that it's a picture of space. So it's not, no one is going to look at that cover and go, oh, that's the cover of the year or anything like that. But it's for $8 essentially on Shutterstock. You've got a cover that people can see what the title is and what the genre is, as long as you've got something, some kind of simple genre. The things to note are, I have tried combining multiple images, multiple stock images, and they look atrocious because I'm not a graphic designer. And I've tried getting fancier with different images and, you know, doing fades and things like that, and that doesn't work either because I'm not a graphic designer. The thing I can do is I can take a stock image and phase out some of the letters so that it looks like it's an okay cover. So, as we said last week, that's not the recommended thing to do because that doesn't, it looks passable, but no one's going to go, wow, look at that cover. Hard Vacuum has had tons of people download it. So it hasn't stopped people. And it's even, I've had maybe 2 or 3 comments saying, I saw the cover and it stood out, so I bought the book. Well, I downloaded the book. It's free. It's a perma-free starter. So yeah, so as we were saying last week, you need to convey genre first and foremost with a cover. And it tells you that it's a sci-fi book. It's got a picture of space. Just to briefly share, because the second one in the series, I think, is pretty snazzy. So if I share my desktop again for a second. So that's the second in the series. Exact same concept, just a better stock image. And then if I go to the third one in the series, that's the third in the series, same again. So yeah, that is my cheap way of making a cover. Yeah, it's not an amazing thing to do. It's not particularly skillful or anything like that. But it's something you can do easily if you don't have the money for any kind of professional cover. And it's also, I think, and I could well be wrong, but I think it's slightly better than having a pre-made cover. So some people go for pre-made covers, which are about $35 to $45 usually. It's better than having a pre-made cover that doesn't exactly fit, I think. That, you know, maybe you're writing a fantasy book and you don't have any dragons in it, and the pre-made cover has a picture of a dragon on it. I think it's better to find your own stock image and do a slightly naff fade out version of the cover than to get something that doesn't fit the story.
Looks like we've got a question. Anita says hi and asks whether we tried Derek Murphy's site. I've looked at it, but as Simon's just said, sometimes you find a cover that looks good but doesn't fit your story well enough. So I haven't taken anything from Derek's site. I know you've used Go On Right a couple of times, Simon.
I have, and it's always, for me, it's been a stopgap kind of. I need a cover, and I don't want to use a 99 Designs $300 one. I just want a cheapy one. So I'll try it out. So I had one for Shiny New Swindle. Shiny New Swindle has never sold very well. And the cover the cover for Shine You Swindle, the first one, was just a kind of a future city with the title obviously legible on it, and the and my name. And
it really worked. It had that sort of like late 80s Gernsback-esque cyberpunk look to me when I first saw it.
I think I might even be able to find it. I can share.
Because it's I saw it, and as I've mentioned probably too many times for some people, it was the first book of Simon's I ever read, and I got in touch after I read it, and we kind of went from there. And that to me.
That's it there on the screen. You can see if I talk, it should focus on me for a second. So yeah, it's, it doesn't really say anything other than it's a future city.
It looked to me exactly like what the story said, and it didn't tell me anything special about the story, but it was a good cover for the story, in my opinion. I didn't feel cheated in any way by it. So I think, it doesn't reach out and grab anyone either.
There was a phenomenal. This is completely off topic now, but there was a phenomenal cyberpunk cover I saw. I'm probably not going to be able to find it now. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I won't be able to find it, but. Yeah, there's a strange thing that's also happening with the Shine You Swindle, that it's a gay main character, so they're now in LGBT categories, which is fine, but it's a bit, it's weird to me that things get recategorized without me choosing to categorize them as such. So one of my books was categorized as women's fiction in Canada, which... I don't know. I mean, I have strong female characters, but I wouldn't classify it as women's fiction. But I don't know. Here, I've actually found the cover. Let's see if I can get the cover up. I don't like the Amazon. Yeah. Anyway, let's see. So, cyberpunk in general doesn't have a kind of a look that people know it's cyberpunk at once. Like some people go for kind of a guy standing in a future city kind of thing, but that could be any kind of subgenre. So that's the one I really liked that was in the cyberpunk genre. And if I click on his name, or his and her name, I think they're a husband and wife team.
Yes.
You see, there's the 3 books. They're doing really well. They've been in the top 100 every time I've looked, of cyberpunk, that is. They're in your collection.
They are.
Didn't even see that.
All These Shiny Worlds. I wasn't going to mention it, but yes, there it is. All These Shiny Worlds. Excellent, utterly free collection of indie authors.
Yeah. And speaking of covers, actually, Jefferson, I know, made this himself, didn't he?
He did, yeah. There's a huge article on his website about how he designed it, all the steps he went through, the design decisions he made. So that's quite interesting if people want to get insight into how he went about making his own cover.
Yeah, and that cover, I think, looks very professional. It looks like an anthology cover.
Yeah.
But again, he is probably far more skilled with graphic design than I am. I don't think I could have made a cover that looked as good as that if I'd tried. So how about you, Dave? Do you have any covers you've made yourself that you wanted to talk about?
Well, think probably my favorite cover that I've made myself is the one for the first collection of 7 Stones, where I actually managed to. It's not necessarily going to win Book Designer of the Year, but I think it stands out well.
Yeah. I have it up here actually. I can share this.
Yeah, if you
Since I was already on Amazon.
You're in control of the Hangout. So yeah.
So, can I make it?
It's running away.
There's Dave's cover. Hopefully you can see that on the screen. So yeah, like it's kind of a sword fighter dude.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's
I don't know. Is it the same font or is it?
That's Hattenschweiler for the title, which I know it's one of those fonts that people have strong opinions about. Well, at least within the typeface community, potentially people have strong opinions about it. I like it because it's another quite blocky font, so that's clear in small images. So in the first attempt at making that cover, I used Blackadder, which is a handwriting font. It looks like 16th century documents. It looked utterly in character for something that's set in a pre-industrial society where there's sort of this feudalism, but it's moved beyond the tight feudal structure of the Middle Ages. But whilst it looked characterful, it was arty rather than selling. So for a poster to put up on a wall, it would have looked great, but it didn't look like a professional book cover. It looked like a poster you'd put up on the wall, and mainly you were about the picture rather than buy this book. And I discovered that by doing my research, by going through the other covers in my genre, in my subgenre, looking for commonalities. So that blocky font for the title, I picked that because lots of creepy horror has a very simple title. It's an image with a very simple title over the top, and the image itself is a murky swamp because the story opens in the rain. There's a lot of weather in it. There's a lot of gritty grimness and general unpleasantness. But to stop it all being just splurgy and to indicate to people that this is more character-driven fiction rather than big battles, I put a figure on the top. And I was very lucky to find that musketeer in a way that actually it was easy to trim the background out and stick it over the top of the image. So that cost me about £5 for the murky background image and half an hour to trim the background off the musketeer, and then another half an hour scaling the musketeer up and down and moving it back and forth. There's something else that's not immediately obvious if you haven't got any image experience, but comes potentially more easily to you if you've ever studied photography or art, is that there are eye lines that the eye will either rest on or not rest on naturally. So one of the reasons why putting one image on top of another doesn't always work is that if you put the key bit of the image somewhere that the eye doesn't rest naturally, people's eyes will flicker between where the eye wants to be unconsciously and where consciously they think they should be looking at. So you get this dissonance or discomfort in your head where the image doesn't quite look right. Whereas if you move one of the elements to a significant point within the book cover shape, the eye will naturally fall on it. So,
I think what we're both kind of saying is, and I was just going to share the Greenstar covers as an example, is that you can kind of fudge your way into a cover that isn't objectionable. That you can kind of learn different things about covers that means that you can piece together something that looks reasonable and people don't go, well, that's terrible. But this is what you get if you pay for something. You get covers like this where someone has actually drawn something really cool to use as a cover. And just to mention that this, what was it? We got 4 covers for $300 or something. Is that right?
Let's see, with the intro pack.
Season 1. Season 2 we had from before, so 3 and 4. So we got...
Yeah. Is we got with season 2 we commissioned, and then we found a very talented artist who could replicate the season 2 cover, and he did the intro pack season 1, season 3, and a cover for season 4, which doesn't exist yet, and he did all of that. So we were very happy with the person who did season 2, but he unfortunately pulled out of. Yeah,
he just didn't. It seemed like, not to speak out of turn, but it seemed like he'd gotten a job in the meantime, and just didn't have the time to devote to making us 4 covers.
Yeah, we got a couple of things from Anita here.
I was going to say the same.
Huge long list of things. It looks like.
Let's see. So there was more stuff about Derek Murphy.
DIY. Yes, he's I've looked at them, but he works in Word, and I try to avoid Microsoft products whenever possible. So I prefer using GIMP for images because it introduces less CLART, particularly with the newer versions of Word where you're getting more and more back-end stuff that you can't see.
I mean, I'm just scrolling through the covers, and they do look good. But I mean, there's so many cover design. I think there's a lot book cover artists now is kind of a flourishing industry, along with indie publishing, because the indie publishing came first, and then the indie publishing people realized, like maybe they started in 2011 or whatever it was, and did their own covers, and the covers looked naff, but they were selling them books for 99 cents or $2.99 or whatever, so people were willing to forgive it. And now people are not willing to forgive it. But the cover design industry has kind of grown to meet the needs of indie book publishers. So just in this week, I've probably had 5 different people sending me links saying, here's a great cover designer. And they're all, like, at this stage, I'm kind of going, they're all really good. And I'm keeping a list of them, but I guess I'm looking for something that's almost exceptional or fits the genre incredibly well at this stage. Like, if so, for my vampire thing, I'll probably be looking for a cover designer who has done a lot of paranormal stuff before and hit it out of the park. Like if the book I'm reading at the moment that's paranormal, if I could potentially send that author an email. She is an indie author, and say, hey, do you mind me asking who your cover designer was, and then finding out who that was and getting the same cover design artist to do my covers. So yeah, I mean, I fully appreciate the link, and I will add him to the list, but I just have so much stuff. So many links now. She also asked, can readers suggest categories? They can, in certain stores. So when I've reviewed books, I have gotten there's a questionnaire now, sometimes you get when you review books, that says, was this book romantic? Yes, no. Was this book dark or whatever? And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that if enough people say this is dark fantasy, that then can push you into a dark fantasy category.
Yeah.
But I don't know for sure. Certainly, I've never tried to select women's literature because I wouldn't consider any of my stuff women's literature. Like I don't even know that I have anything that's strong enough romantically to put it in romance, which would be a kind of an adjacent category. So that must have been from either a reader or Amazon themselves deciding this is women's literature somehow, and I don't know how.
Well, there's talk, and I don't know how much of it's true, with Amazon reviewing books, like not as in posting a book review, but as in terms of they have people who work for them who will read through books and do a manual update of the metadata. So potentially, if one of your books gets caught up in that, or a book that you're linked with strong enough to appear on the also boards gets picked up for review, and that gets put in a category, well, if this book's women's fiction and your book and this book are quite similar, then your book is probably going to appeal to women's fiction readers as well, because Amazon aren't in it for the taxonomy. They don't want to have these perfect little bounded boxes for some intellectual dream of everything having the right label on it. Amazon, and they don't make any real secret of it, want someone to come to the Amazon site and bosh, there in their face is the thing that person is most likely to buy at this moment, with a big button for them to press that will let Amazon sell it to them. So if they stick something in women's fiction or in dark fantasy, that isn't because they think you are the archetypal women's fiction author. It's because they think your book will sell to people who like women's fiction.
One thing to mention as well, you're saying sell there, which brought up the also boughts. I didn't know this, but the also boughts actually changed a few months back, and they no longer ever show free books. So perma-free books are no longer shown in also boughts. So all the kind of correlations they had before, where they said, so the Bite on the Line, for instance, is probably was in some people's also boughts for fantasy, or maybe comics and fantasy. That vanished, which explains so much about. They said it happened in November kind of time, I think. Explains a lot, because I fell off a cliff then. Like, my free downloads disappeared.
Yeah, it's for months.
Yeah, it just was gone. Like, they went from dozens a day at least to I don't know what I'm on now, about 8 or 9 a day.
Yeah.
So that's also, it's complete aside, but that's something that I didn't know that just came up this week in a podcast, which kind of makes you think perhaps 99 cents might be the way to go for certain titles going forward. So, for instance, for our prologue title, potentially 99 cents would get us in the also boughts, whereas free would not. At the same time, free is free. It's very easy to push a free book and say, hey, check this out, it's free.
Yeah. On the subject of pushing series, obviously we've been talking about designing your own cover over buying a cover and why you might want to do it. One place where potentially you can take a compromise stance is on a series. Because with a series, you're going to get very few people proportionally who are going to come in on book 3. You're not selling book 3 strongly by this book because it's a great book. You're selling book 3 mostly as people who read books 1 and 2 will buy this. So with later books in a series, potentially you can get away with a cover that doesn't have quite so much. When someone sees it in thumbnail, they're going to go, ooh, that's an interesting cover, click on it. Because if you've been building your audience so that people who get book 1 and 2 are going to buy book 3, it's already getting to the point where they're thinking, well, I'll look out for book 3. And if you've managed to get them onto your email list, then you're telling them when book 3 is coming out. So for the later books in a series, you're potentially not trying to capture the casual glance in the same way. So you could do your own cover for later books and just spend the money on upselling the first book in the series with an expensive professional cover.
So to give an example of exactly what you're talking about, if you see, can I zoom in? So The Bite on the Line was a custom cover. It actually cost me, was it $500, I think, at the time.
Sounds like what you said, yeah.
So The Bite of Binds then was my friend Jeff, who is a graphic designer, took an image that I had found. I tried to do a version of it, and it looked crap. So he made a version of it very kindly for free. So thank you, Jeff. The third one, then I got a custom cover again because of the hiccups with the second one. The fact that I'd used, 10 hours probably trying to make it work. But the fourth one, then, I then was figuring, well, we're now so late in the series that who's going to pick up book 4 in a tightly, it's not a series where you can just, it's not like a crime thing where you can just pick up any of them and it doesn't matter. This, you really have to start with book 1. So I found a stock image and did just put some white text over it. By the Rust, I did the same, found a stock image of actual Rust, and then I just color corrected it and it turned into this nice kind of blood red. So I went, oh, that's pretty cool, and put some text over it. And then The Bite of a King, I found this stock image, which didn't quite match the rest of the series, if I zoom out a bit. So I was going to go with this, and then a few different people said they didn't like it. I think you even said, Dave, yeah, that's not really a match to the other stuff. So then I got a custom cover for it from the same artist, so it actually matches. But generally, like for that series, books 4 and 5 are just completely just hack jobs that I did myself.
Yeah, I have another question from Anita. If you have a book for free, then change it to another price, will the freebies then show up in the also bought section for those who got it while it was free? Well, certainly, if you start charging for a book, it's going to count as a paid book from then on.
Yeah.
So the also boughts will work. I know that rankings don't carry across exactly.
I heard something else this week, actually. Rankings do carry across if you're in Kindle Unlimited.
Oh, right.
So if you use so you have 3 days if you're in Kindle Unlimited. I forget how many, 3 or 4 or something. And if you use those, the ranking, it's not 1-to-1, but the rankings that you get from the freebies in those free days do count when you move back to paid. But if you're perma-free through the kind of price matching thing, they don't.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'd say so that doesn't cross over like that. But I don't know if someone gets your book while it's free. I don't know if that would then count towards also boughts. So when your book.
It would be a very interesting experiment, but I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, so I'm not. Well, yes, the supposed rules for how you get into also bought has changed at least once since I started really watching it. Though potentially you wouldn't know how to guarantee you're in also boughts, so you couldn't say, well, I'm not showing up, so it's not carrying across. 'Cause it might be there's something else that affects it. As the rumor, I've heard that it's related to sales, so a certain number of linked sales will trigger it. I've also heard that it's limited by some sort of quality measure, so you have to have at least X reviews with an average of above 3 before it will display it, or you've got to have an average above 4 before it will display it, or whatever. But it's hard.
That's a pain in the neck as well. Having a perma-free book obviously means you have a lower review score, because people will pick it up when they're not. I've had non-fantasy people pick it up and go, "Oh, this stupid thing."
I try not to speak ill of readers, because readers are almost always the best of people. But picking up a book outside your genre just because it's free, so you'll take a risk, and then it's not for you, I don't know. It seems somewhat odd posting a bad review for a book that you picked up because it's not the kind of thing you like.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I don't like crime. If I picked up a free crime book and didn't enjoy it, even the paranormal fantasy I was reading that I didn't enjoy, I didn't go and give it a bad review. I don't know whether that's because I'm an author and I know that there's 2 things. Firstly, just because you didn't enjoy something, don't, like, if you love paranormal fantasy and you went, I don't like this particular one because of these reasons, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you don't like paranormal fantasy and you go, I hate paranormal fantasy, that's a stupid review to leave. I mean,
so we read sort of some of the reviews you read, and it's like, this book is ridiculous. The author's grasp of the science behind spaceflight is terrible. It's like, well, it's in the style of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So, like, I'd say that not being hard sci-fi is potentially an advantage.
Yeah, but that's the same person who would read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and go, this is ridiculous, the improbability drive and the somebody else's problem drive and all that kind of stuff. These are not scientifically accurate things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, we've kind of overrun our time. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we end, Dave? Did Anisha have any other? Yeah, so she just said, potentially. So I've had 50,000+ downloads. She said if you've got 3,000 readers who have the free book and then you put it to 99 cents, potentially Amazon might realize that there was 3,000 people with that in their libraries.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to test, but it would be potentially a winning strategy.
Well, yeah, Amazon, as I said before, are in it for the selling. So they are certainly going to have internally a record of whether or not your book tends to be bought with others. So once your book is paid, they're going to have an interest in as many people who like it as possible seeing it, so they might buy it. So I don't see why Amazon wouldn't have some way of going, well, this book was downloaded 3,000 times while it was free, and it's got an average of 3.5. So now it's going to make us money every time someone downloads it. We'll stick it up in the also boards. It would make business sense, but that might not be the strategy they're using. They might have a different strategy to maximize their revenue.
Yeah, I think it's worth experimenting, because we've certainly seen this week with the hacker people ripping off the KENP numbers. I don't know if you saw that, Dave.
Yeah, that's
it's amazing. Like, did they figured that out, that Amazon doesn't know how many pages someone's read, which means that the number of Kindle pages read thing for Kindle Unlimited is completely shaky and won't stand up at all as soon as someone tries to hack it. But anyway, so I think there are potential loopholes, is the wrong word, but potential opportunities there. Not that you try and do what the hackers are doing of ripping people off, or that's ripping off every author in Kindle Unlimited. But that you could give away your perma-free book and then put it to 99 cents and see if it then pops up in people's also books. Because it isn't, if you know what kind of books are appearing in your also books, you can check on every single one of those and see if your book appears on it. And yeah, they should align somewhat. Not necessarily 100%, because the other book could be selling massively more books. Or, yeah, anything could be the case. Anyway, we should probably leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much for watching. Was there anything you wanted to add before we pop out, Dave?
Don't think so. No, I think we're sorted there. We've for something we advised people wasn't necessarily the best strategy. We've managed to find a lot to talk about.
Yeah. So as we say, we advise against it, but it's always an option, especially when you're trying to get books out fast. So we'll leave it there. We're off next week, as it is my wife and I's 20th anniversary together and 18th wedding anniversary. So I thought potentially I should take the day off and not do a podcast.
Yeah, there's only a certain amount of I need to keep the momentum going, otherwise I'll lose productivity that you can do before you wake up to discover you're in the driveway.
So yeah, we'll be skipping a week, but we'll be back in 2 weeks' time, and we'll see you then.